My fellow Americans, today we're going to talk about without rule of law. Without rule of law is an indicator that many in the preparedness community use to determine when or when not the poo has collided with the ventilator. Fortunately, I think that many people have without rule of law wrong. You'll have to excuse me. I'm coming to you from an undisclosed location outside the brown zone. Without rule of law, or WROL, implies that the rule of law no longer works, and many in the preparedness community have certain courses of action or COAs that they would employ, or at least think that they would employ, when WROL happens. For your consideration, my friends, we're already there. We're already there. And don't worry about me. I got Tim Kennedy over there and Jocko Willink over there as part of my security detail, manning their positions. Yeah, I'm good to go. But as part of your plan for continuity of you and your home and your loved ones and your community, some things I think you should consider. First of all, the United States Constitution is the highest law in this land. Period. The end. If you need any indicator as to whether or not we have rule of law, look at whether or not the Constitution is upheld in today's world, in today's country, as the highest law of the land. I'm going to let you make your own conclusions about that. Next, under the rule of law, you have some say as to how this country is run in a representative republic. I'm going to ask you to consider how represented by your republic you feel currently. And consider the legitimacy of the process with which we engage in to elect said representatives. Next, the police in many areas of this country are being actively defunded. Police officers are law enforcement officers. If we, collective we, big we, if elements within we are seeking to defund them, how well do you think they will be able to enforce the rule of law? Additionally, many jurisdictions have removed or are considering removing qualified immunity. Now, I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on the internet. That's what we have the Attorney General of Barristan for. Gurkha. Beast. Tremendous. But qualified immunity more or less states if you use a tactic, a maneuver, an approach that you have been trained on by your department, and something negative, perceived or actual, results from the use of that tactic, that maneuver, that approach, you as the officer are not held accountable. You have qualified immunity because you have been qualified by the department to use that maneuver, that action, that tactic. Many departments are doing away with that if they haven't already, which means that law enforcement officers are losing that covering and they're walking off the job. Some could say that that would leave those jurisdictions without the rule of law. One doesn't have to spend much time looking around the national landscape for protests that are actually riots that are occurring all over the place. And lastly, for your consideration, do a comparative analysis of net worth against incidents of incarceration. And what I mean by this is, if you have billions of dollars or tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars, you don't go to prison. No. That's right. Especially if you're part of a political dynasty in this country, you don't go to prison. Slap on the wrist, too big to fail, pay the fines, don't do that again, and carry on. The reason I bring all these examples up, my fellow Americans, is because if you consider all of these facets of this discussion, one could very easily come away with the idea that we no longer have the rule of law. And if we don't, what does that mean for you? Because this thing, this SHTF, the end of the world as we know it, however, whatever label you want to put on it, it's more likely to be a slow burn, I'm guessing, than one big catastrophic event. More like the frog in the pot of water, slowly getting the temperature turned up, then slamming the frog into a boiling pot of water. Because the frog will sit there and take it. And you and I, we're the frogs. And this society we find ourselves in, it's the pot of water. Now the government derives its just powers from the consent of the governed. Now, we could argue that their powers are no longer just, and I think you'd be well within your rights to make that argument. But also, at what point do you or I no longer consent to be governed? See, this is a major concern when dealing with an insurgency, because an insurgency can only exist within the environment where the government is losing its legitimacy because it fails to protect and provide for its people. How long do you suppose the people, under the current governance of these United States of America, are going, how long do you think it's going to take for us collectively to realize we don't have rule of law anymore? These powers are not just. This government, regardless of the election, is illegitimate. It's illegitimate because it does not recognize facta non verba, deeds not words, does not recognize the highest law of the land. In fact, it seems to be working counter to the highest law of the land. And the system that has been put in place in Washington, D.C. over the last 150 years is designed in such a way to work around the Constitution, which is a roadblock, a hindrance, rather than to uphold the Constitution as the highest law of the land. And so, for your consideration, we're already in without rule of law. What are you gonna do about it? What are we gonna do about it? May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. Blue Collar Prez, out.